But there is a difference between a guy who's 40 and a girl who's 40. Do you guys agree or disagree?
Well,
Absolutely.
because at 40 for a woman, it's basically over.
That's right.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, guys aren't.
As far as having kids?
Guys are having kids and like physically for most women. Yeah. I mean, there's exceptions, sure, but that's not the rule. But as a 40-year-old guy that like, you know, if you're doing pretty well, like you could get married tomorrow with a 25-year-old, have 5 kids and still have a whole life. That's just not the case biologically for women.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's true. Comments?
Yeah, I think it's sad. And also, in some way, I think it's embarrassing for women that are put in those situations because how do you make it to 40 and not learn how to get along with a man?
Literally.
How do you make it that far?
Exactly.
You just never pick up on cues. And sometimes these women have children, and that's great. And, you know, sometimes they don't have a man, but sometimes they don't have either which one. They're just absolutely by themselves. And so, like, is that a full life?
Well, even if you have children, if you don't have a man, it is also over because you ruin the life of the kid by not having a father in the picture. And like, but I agree entirely. How could you possibly get to 40 and not know how to get along with a man? Like, so many people have told you what you're supposed to be doing. The only way you could not get along with a man is if you're, first of all, you're delusional. Second of all, you're multiple time alpha widowed. Or, you know, you wasted your entire 20s and 30s sleeping around with Chad, right? And then expect to turn around at 40. Like, that's not going to happen. You need to, like, ideally, you would be married at 18 to 23. Ideally.
Because, so they have girlfriends, that's great. But are all of those girlfriends single? Or are they also like married with children or they have professions? It seems lonely to me. And I think women come out and they try to say that it's not. And I think it's a cope. You can see it on the TikTok.
It is lonely, of course. And by the way, the girls that are married with children, they're not going to have single female friends. They're going to be friends only with other married people or, you know, other wholesome people because they want good influence on their children, right? Like, the life changes a lot once you have a kid. Like, it's not the same. So, like, again, and also single women keep women single. Like, they'll actively, like, you know, try to like brainwash their female friends that being single is great and, like, you know, compete with their, you know, female friends who have relationships or marriages to try to destroy them, right? Or they'll try to steal the husband or the boyfriend.
Pages like, look at me, I'm so happy, I'm drinking wine and I'm 40 and I'm single.
Well,
if you're so happy, why do you have to make your entire TikTok page and your identity
I'll tell you,
about that?
I'm not going to say this girl's name, but I'll give a very clear example of someone that every time I'm like, oh, damn you. She was one of the hottest girls in high school. Grew up, you know, in her 20s, guys were throwing themselves left and right. She had her pick of the litter. By 30, she was still out there in South Beach doing her thing. Still didn't have a man. And then I didn't see her for many years, right? I think she lived in New York doing her thing. But then I ran into her, I don't know, maybe like 3-ish years ago. And she was in her late 30s, early 40s. Now, the dude that she was, like, the guys that were pursuing her, certified studs in their 20s or whatever. Now, essentially, she's like, hey, what's up with your friend over there? And, like, this guy, I wouldn't say he's a stud. So now, the girl who was 21, 25, even 30, that had her pick of the litter, has to realize that at 40, the studs aren't exactly throwing themselves on her anymore.
That's right. That's called the epiphany phase, when the girl realizes that she can't get the guys that she used to be able to get. But the problem is this: because she's been sleeping around doing her thing, as the guy says, she's multi-time alpha widowed, and if she's multi-time alpha widowed, then she's unable to pair bond, so she can't ever appreciate a man like that. And so she'll make that man's life miserable. And so I recommend that you never date girls this age. Because if you do, you're going to end up miserable. Their bad decisions are going to rub off on you.
Anymore. Well, that's something a woman had to deal with. And I felt like so bad. I was like, and I told the guy, because I'm friends with the guy, because he was like, what's up? I was like, dude, you don't understand. In high school, college, she was like the hottest chick. He's like, yeah, but that's 20 years ago, bro.
But why did you feel bad for her? That was her choice. She made her bed lie in it.
Not one choice. If she made one bad choice, it would have been fine. Get with the second guy, marry him, have children, it'd be fine. She didn't make one bad choice. She made like 100 bad choices in a row actively. That's the sad part. Hello and welcome to heliosblog. My name is Helios, here for another reaction video. If you're new to the channel, liking the content, please hit the sub, hit all for notifications. If you'd like to support me, I do have a Patreon with exclusive content. It's patreon.com/theheliosblog. Just go there and subscribe to any tier. Any level of support is appreciated. All right, let's continue.
I didn't lose sleep over it, but I constantly think of it because these are now that I'm 41. I know girls in their late 30s, early 40s who are still single, and I'm like,
I have a question.
Go ahead, Coco. I don't know if I struck a chord there, but go ahead.
No, it's for them.
She's 31. She's not 60. Okay?
No,
not at all. Coco's a high.
I do not care about being 40 and whatever. Question for them: would you, let's say, if you get a divorce, would you consider that as defeat? Like,
yes, that is a loss. That is a fail. That is failure.
you didn't.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. You should be upset. I am divorced. That's a ding on my record. That is a failure. I failed. I mean, he also failed. You know, I'm not bent out of shape about it because I got the man of my dreams. But you should look at divorce as a failure. I don't know why you wouldn't.
Yeah.
You chose poorly, and now
Here's the thing. I don't know if you know the statistics, but people that are divorced are much more likely to divorce than people that have never divorced. So even if the girl was beautiful and feminine and acting friendly and all that, if I found out she was divorced, I would never consider her for a marriage. And the reason is because she's already failed one. And she failed one the first time when she was less alpha widowed, when she was better able to pair bond, when she was younger, when she was more attractive. Why would she ever succeed the second time is what I would think. She's already ruined herself by her own actions, by her own admission, and there is no reason for me to have to deal with such a person. All right, let's continue.
now you've wasted each other's time.
Interesting.
No, you can't really waste a man's time the same way you can waste a woman's time. Women are only biologically fertile in their prime from the age of 18 to 23, and you could even argue till, let's say, 28, right? So if she's not giving those years to you, she's already wasted. Like she's already not worth what the other girls are that are younger. You're literally. I mean, when I say that, I don't mean they don't have self-worth as human beings. Obviously, what I mean is their worth in terms of reproduction, their ability to bear your children and have healthy offspring, is greatly reduced. And as a result of that, you should choose a better partner because you want to have children that are healthy, that don't have genetic diseases, that don't end up autistic, etc., etc. It's very important for you to have a younger partner that's a girl in order to prevent these problems. And a lot of the arguments I've heard is stuff like, yes, but men's, gametes are less viable as they get older too. Okay, sure, but not to the same extent as women's. A lot less. Because men produce millions, right? And the gametes already have to compete. Whereas women are born with all the eggs they'll ever have when they're young, and the eggs decline in quantity and quality over time, right? So because of the differing reproductive strategies of the two genders, one ages better than the other. That's just how it goes.
Interesting.
Would you say it's a failure if you were able to give birth to children and like your children ended up in like a good place and they have a successful future? In the sense, like, for example, like you have people who get married and then they find out this other person is not who they are, right? And then kids come out of it.
Right.
And the kids turn out great, successful, and all that stuff. Would you still say that it was a failure, or would you say that it's a success?
No, it's still a failure. It's beautiful that the children are here. Most parents don't regret their kids that innately, but it is still a failure. You chose poorly. You reproduced. Now these children don't have a father in the home.
That's right. That's exactly the issue. The issue is children that are the children of single parents, right, or divorced parents, have worse outcomes than children in stable families. And so it's very important for a girl to choose wisely when she's young, right? You can't be out here sleeping with a million chads and then expect to have a good life later. No, you have to be very wise in who you're choosing when you're young, or else it's going to lead to your ruin. and maybe more importantly, to your children's ruin. Your own genes will be passed on poorly as a result of those poor decisions. Okay, let's go to the Rational Male. We read an article here. All right, so this is, again, Rollo Tomasi, the godfather of, yeah, anyway. Just go to the Rational Male if you want to hear more of his stuff, okay? I'm just going to read from his blog here. This is AFC Social Conventions. After detailing the qualities of the AFC, which I tend to call losers, I feel it's necessary to illustrate that social conventions aren't the exclusive realm of the feminine imperative. AFCs have their own set of social conventions, those of which are commonly practiced and self-reinforced by the beta mindset. I realize that there are more than a few of these conventions, and they're going to get under the skin of some readers. However, as you read this, please try to do so objectively. I'm writing this as an observation. It's not intended to be a personal affront to anyone. You could call losers, loser conventions rationalizations, but I think this ignores the socially reinforcing element of these conventions. When I wrote the qualities of the loser, I outlined the characteristic traits, behaviors, and core mental schemes of what are commonly believed to be loser qualities. This was a brief list to sum up a few root elements in identifying and dealing with a loser mindset and aid in unplugging the loser. Social conventions are different in that they're socially reinforced, usually by both genders, and rationalizations for behavior. Technically, some of the loser qualities I outlined previously could be considered social conventions as well, but I was attempting to address the symptoms rather than the disease. I'm going to define a few more examples of what I've most commonly noticed as loser mental schemas, and these are the things that are reinforced socially. A strong part of the internalization process of these conventions is that the reason they're socially reinforced is because they're socially unassailable, or at least it's foolish to do so. In other words, the common response to them would be to reinforce them more rather than challenge them, and this becomes an integral part of the internalization process. So, the first one is the myth of the quality woman. It seems like all I read about on SoSuave is the never-ending quest for a quality woman. There's always been plenty of threads asking for clear definitions of what constitutes a quality woman, and most conveniently set women up into two camps, quality women and ladies of the night, as if there could be no middle ground or gray area. How easy it becomes to qualify a woman based on her indiscretions, as heinous as they're perceived to be for either of these categories. This is binary thinking at best, on and off, black or white, quality woman or lady of the night. I think the term quality woman is a misnomer. Guys tend to apply this term at their leisure, not so much to define what they like in a woman, but rather to exclude women with whom they'd really had no chance with in the first place, or mistakenly applied too much effort and too much focus on only to be rebuffed. This isn't to say that there aren't women who will behave maliciously or indiscriminately, nor am I implying that they ought to be excused out of hand for such. What I am saying is that it's a very loser predilection to hold women up to a preconceived idealization and conveniently discount them as being less than quality when you're unable to predict, much less control their behaviors. The dangers inherent in this convention is that the loser, or even the enlightened man subscribing to the convention, then limits himself to only what he perceives as a quality woman based on sour grapes conditioning. Ergo, they'll end up with a quality woman by default because she's the only candidate who would accept him for her intimacy. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy by process of elimination. Taken to its logical conclusion, they shoot the arrow, paint the target around it, and call it a bullseye, and after which they feel good for having held a misguided conviction. So why is this a social convention then? Because it's socially unassailable. Since this convention is rooted in a binary premise, no one would likely challenge it. It would be foolish for me to say, yes, Mr. Chump, I think you ought to avoid what you think of as a quality woman. Okay, the myth of the dodged bullet. In my lifetime, I've had bedroom fun with over 40 women, and I never once caught a venereal disease, nor did I get anyone pregnant. I can also point to men I know who've contracted herpes from the only woman they'd ever had bedroom fun with. The fact of the matter is that you can equally be a rock star and tap hundreds of women without any consequence, and you can be a guy who's never had bedroom fun and contracted the disease on your wedding night. The myth of the dodged bullet is a social convention that's rooted in the rationalization that monogamy serves the purpose of controlling bedroom fun diseases, and thus fewer partners are more desirable than many. From a statistical standpoint, this may seem logical on the surface. Fewer opportunities for bedroom fun would indeed decrease the risk from a single individual, but unfortunately, that isn't a practical estimate. You'll also have to base the numbers on not only how many bedroom fun partners you and your monogamous partner have had, but how many prior partners they've had and how many those partners have had as well, and so on exponentially. Despite all of this, the odds that you'll die from a form of cancer, heart disease, smoking, or obesity, or even an alcohol-related traffic fatality, far outweigh any risk of dying from a venereal disease in Western society. Okay, next is location. Another common contrivance is the presumption that less than desirable, low-quality women will necessarily be found in bars and clubs, or other places of ill repute. Thus, the chump will too eagerly avoid these places. This is yet another example of the binary logic of a loser and completely ignores that women with whom they might make a successful connection do in fact frequent clubs, and less than desirable women can also be met in alternative meeting places too. Coffee houses, university, campus, library, Bible study, or any number of other safe places. However, making approaches in a club are difficult for the inexperienced game adherent and AFC alike. There's a lot of competition and a lot of potential for real-time rejection for the unprepared. By masking this deficit in game with condemning such places, the loser thinks he's killing two birds with one stone. He's protecting his ego, and he's lauded by proper society for being an upstanding citizen. The myth of other guys. This is perhaps the most dangerous of loser social convention. We don't like to think we're unique and special. It's comforting thought, but our uniqueness means nothing if it isn't appreciated. We don't like to be beautiful, talented, intelligent, and extraordinary in some way, to some degree, and to have others notice these qualities. This is the root of the not like other guys convention. The idea is that the loser can and will be appreciated in a greater degree for his personal convictions and or his greater ability to identify with women's stated prerequisites of man by comparing himself to nebulous other guys who are perceived not to abide by his stated conditions. The intent is to, in essence, self-generate social proof for attraction while substituting a real social element with perceived or reported social evidence. The fallacy in this schema is that it's always better to demonstrate social proof than to explicate it, but this is lost on the losers subscribing to this convention. I'd argue that 95% of men aren't even aware they're repeating reinforcing social conventions at all, because the convention is so embedded into social consciousness it's taken for granted. The most effective social conventions are the ones in which the subject willingly sublimates his own interests, discourages questioning it, and predisposes that person to encourage and reinforce the convention with others. This is the essence of the matrix. Anything can become normal. Okay, so just read The Rational Male if you want to hear more. Let's continue with this video here.
But we're so used to it, we think that it's okay, but the outcomes are still negative. Like, I grew up in a single mother home. I had a lot of
Ironic, and then she got divorced, not surprisingly, right? And now she's supposedly a good girl, but I mean, her likelihood of a second divorce is very high. Just because you're wearing a white dress and a nice necklace doesn't mean that you're not going to get divorced a second time. The statistics are the statistics.
lot of risk factors that I had to solve myself in the dating market. And that's something that doesn't get talked about. It's all about this eat, pray, love. And that's not to say, you know, stay in a relationship and be miserable, but sometimes you got to make your bed and lie in it, and you got to be roommates.
Well, because when you have kids, it's not about you anymore.
Oh, sorry. I need to close
Hi guys,
this.
welcome back to the...
I don't know what this is. Sorry, I just clicked on some random video in the recommended. Okay, let's continue.
Basically, I just saw him saying bye to me, and I was crying so hard. And I couldn't explain the feeling that I was missing out, that I realized that I'm more like a father's daughter girl, like I'm more like into, I want to have a father, but it's really difficult to explain because I never actually had.
And that's the thing, right? You're supposed to have a father, you're supposed to have a father figure, you're supposed to be raised properly, and when you're not, it turns into all kinds of terrible crap, right? And this is because our society encourages all kinds of bad behavior, and because it encourages all kinds of bad behavior, well, guess what? That bad behavior leads to negative consequences. It leads to girls growing up without fathers. It leads to boys growing up without fathers. It leads to girls having children out of wedlock. It leads to much more incarceration. It leads to much more illicit substance use, etc. Like all kinds of bad stuff, right? And broken begets broken, right? Bad stuff creates more bad stuff. So, I mean, this whole problem could be prevented by just a different attitude, right? A different understanding of how the world works. But again, people are so interested in just perpetuating the bull crap that society says that this is where we're at. All right, let's do a fake Tinder profile here. So this is a 30-year-old. Again, you can just Google these. They're fake, but there's a lot to be learned even from the fake ones. So here's what she says. You should message me if you're looking to date in a low-commitment, long-term relationship. So again, notice she's 30, so now she's had her fun, she wants to settle down. Finishing up school is my #1 priority right now, and I can't give too much to a deeply invested relationship. So again, you see, I'm a boss babe, I'm strong and independent, you see what I'm saying? Like, this stuff is what ruins women for long-term relationships. You should also message me if you're career driven, it's attractive, and can keep up good banter, it's also attractive. Driven, smart, and funny, that's the combo. So again, notice, When she's 30 years old, she wants a guy who's driven, smart, and funny. But when she was 20, she's looking for charge. She's looking to have fast bedroom fun. She's not ready to settle down. She's just out there doing her thing, quote unquote. You see the difference, guys? You can tell just by the age of the person what they're going to say.
So I had stepfathers, obviously, who I looked up to as a father figure, but I never actually been able to call anyone father.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So how do you feel like not having a stable father in the home may have affected your development into becoming a woman?
To be honest, no, because
Oh my God. Right, but yet she's on this show not wearing a dress. She's on this show with no ring on her left hand. So
for me, someone is a father by their actions, not because they made.
yeah, you're the man that stepped up. You're not the stepdad. But again, this social convention is garbage. Because why? Because you should not raise another man's child. And the reason you shouldn't is because you're using your resources to invest in offspring that you didn't create. So you're not perpetuating your own genes. You're actively participating in your own extinction by doing that. That's why it's bad.
Me. So I actually considered my stepfather, who was in my life for almost 8 years, more like a father to me than the actual father by blood.
Okay.
So for me, that means more that he was teaching me, guiding me, giving me.
And he was only there for 8 years. So imagine the wife, she encouraged the stepfather to bond with the child, to form a connection, to la la la, and then she just ripped it away. You see? But totally no consequences for the child.
Me basically
Disaster.
everything that I needed during that 7-8 years or so, before my mom and him broken up. So basically I considered him more like a father because of the things he has done for me. So I cannot really say that I missed my father just because
you had someone there.
Yes, exactly.
See, because it's a thing where you was lucky.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? Because I feel like, well, in my experience, most people that did grow up like in a single parent home, they probably didn't have a steady guy there to fulfill that role. Do you get what I'm saying? So, yeah, I understand where you're coming from. Okay, all right. I'll move on to the next. What do you think? What do you think about it?
So I'm in the same position where growing up, I was 13 when my dad died. And it happened really unexpectedly when he was on holiday in Spain with my mom.
Terrible.
And just randomly had a brain stroke and passed away. So going back to the topic, it's one of...
Okay, so notice the difference, okay? Girl that grew up with a stepfather in the home. She's not wearing a dress. She looks miserable. She's wearing black nail polish. It almost looks like she's at a funeral. Versus girl that grew up with an actual father. He sadly passed away when she was 13, but she had a stable father. She had a father. She had a biological father. Look at the difference. You can tell just in how they're dressed. By the way, the girl without the father, she's overweight, and she's spouting the social conventions to make herself feel better. Look at the girl on the left. She looks feminine. Her hair is done. She's wearing a beautiful white dress. What more needs to be said? Like, that in and of itself, as Rollo says, the medium is the message.
Of those things where you don't know what you don't know. Like, I don't know how I would have turned out or how my behavior now would be different if I did have a father figure. But what I can say is, at such a young age, a lot of our beliefs and attitudes around men as a woman is modeled off what our parents teach us. So the only thing that I saw was that my parents had a good relationship, but growing up, through my teenage years, I never had a father to tell me, how to date, how to have a healthy.
Right, and this is a problem, right? That is definitely a problem, and here's why it's a problem. Girls around the age of 14, when they hit, their puberty, right? They start to get attention from men. And if they don't know the true nature of reality, they're going to make bad decisions. And here's the problem. If girls start sleeping around 14, 15, 16, 17, whatever, by the time they get to the age where they're supposed to be married and having children, they're not going to be married and having children. Instead, they're going to be alpha widowed, sad, miserable, and dealing with all kinds of baggage, which makes men avoid them, which makes them even less likely to get married. And even if they do, they're more likely to get divorced. You see what I'm saying? That's why you need a stable family, especially a stable father in the household.
Attitude towards men. So I had to learn a lot of that myself.
Okay, all right. Do you feel the same way, or like, you know, you had your dad there, he was helping you kind of navigate?
I wouldn't, sorry for going back for that, but I wouldn't really say he was mainly a dad to me. I think he was kind of tolerating me because he was together with my mom.
Indeed.
So he had to take on some sort of responsibilities because I was there.
By force kind of thing.
But yeah.
Yeah. You see? Do you want to be the child that was tolerated? No, obviously not. But more than this is this. Like the stepfather in that situation. Do you want to be the guy who's forced to tolerate like another Chad's like kid? Obviously not, right? It's like obvious. Okay. Let's read this Reddit article and we're done. Okay, my girlfriend, so this guy is 24 and his girlfriend is 22, is beyond furious because I let her go with Uber. A bit of background. Girlfriend and I have been together for a bit over 2 years. I'm a university student and I work part-time. She's a university student looking for a job. Due to our cultures, we both live with our families still and won't move until marriage. I have a car and her sister gives her free credit on her Uber account so she doesn't need to pay anything when she uses it. Yesterday, we went out to a paid cafe with our group of friends. She mostly dislikes these events, but sometimes feels like going, just like today. For me, I love to go to these type of events, but I never have the time, nor does our group of friends enjoy going there much. Usually, we stay out late. However, yesterday, her mother called. She was angry with something and demanded my girlfriend comes back home a few hours earlier. She often does that. During that time, we were sitting around with our friends and some new people enjoying some games. Now, 99% of the time, unless it's something out of our control, I drove her from back to her home or wherever we go. Sometimes I wanted to stay, but I always stepped up when she said she had to leave and took her home. Then went back home because they're far apart. However, this time my girlfriend told me that she'll leave with Uber and I can stay. I automatically assumed that she'd leave with Uber this time since she knew I enjoyed these events and I didn't have time to go to them a lot. She ordered an Uber and she appeared upset later after that. I asked her what's wrong many times and texted her in case she didn't want to talk in front of people. She said nothing was wrong. I assumed it's because her mom was really angry, so I kept asking if her mom was upset or whatever, and she told me to stop talking about it. I was afraid I was beginning to annoy her and her mom really upset her, so I stopped. So again, whose frame is the relationship in? The man's or the woman's? Obviously the woman's. She texted me while I was there saying that she's beyond angry and wants me to go home so we can talk about it. I was genuinely confused and had no idea what was wrong. I asked what's wrong and she said she's not going to spoon feed me everything and that these are basic men things to know and ask the guys around me why she's mad. Obviously I didn't appreciate how she was talking and didn't even know what I did wrong, but I remained calm. I got home and called her for like 30 minutes before she answered. She then said that I should have walked her down to the Uber. I admit I should have at the very least, despite that it was very safe and crowded. She continued saying that men don't let their girls go with Uber and it's their responsibility to take care of them and drive them back to the house. She also said that this time she had to pay for the Uber and she started getting heated and said any other boyfriend could have done better than me and she's sick of telling me how to act, etc. She blamed me for being catcalled and crying in the Uber over me and how the driver gave her issues and took care of her more than me. The event place was a square full of people and cafes and cities very alive at night and not unsafe at all, so I was not that worried about her commute. So I was taken aback because I honestly thought she was okay with her taking Uber because she was in a hurry to leave and she wanted to enjoy the rest. She claimed she was being courteous by saying that and I should have stepped up. I apologized to her and took the full blame. She kept going and started talking about how she told her mom directly when she got home and that she would never marry a man like me over this and that she's thinking of breaking up because a real man doesn't let his girlfriend go like that. I told her to remain respectful as we're trying to solve it, not to fight, and it's the first time in 2 years it happened, and it's very unfair to say that. Also, last year I used to take her back to her house from her university, which took me exceeding more than 1 hour and a half to get back home, 4 days a week. She said that it's my responsibility to do that as a man, and that if I'm too busy, I'm supposed to pay for it. I got pissed and told her that I'm not a driver. I do it out of love, not because I have to do it. I also told her that she should appreciate my gestures and not take them for granted. Now we're fighting, and I don't know my next step. Any advice is welcome. Imagine being the guy who does all these nice things for the girl and then she's still ungrateful. That's called a bad girlfriend. So if the girlfriend doesn't change her behavior, I'd break up with her too. Because she's ungrateful. She just expects the behaviors and takes them for granted. No, he's doing it out of love or out of the goodness of his heart, and you should appreciate that. And if you don't appreciate that, well, I mean, the relationship can die. That's my opinion anyway. Okay, we're going to end the video there. Again, if you're new to the channel, liking the content, please hit the sub, hit all for notifications. If you'd like to support me, I do have a Patreon with exclusive content. It's patreon.com/theheliosblog. Just subscribe to any tier. Any level of support is appreciated. Okay, thank you so much, everyone, for listening, especially if you took the time out of your busy day to listen till the end of the video. You guys are wonderful, and I will see you next time.